Hello once again and welcome to the video. We're going to look at yet another game by Hans Niemann. It doesn't seem to be, many other things being talked about in the chess world these days outside of Hans Niemann and Magnus Carlsen. And well, we finally got some words from the world champion. Magnus did an interview finally on the official broadcast yesterday and was asked some questions. A good job by Kaya, by the way, on the interview, trying to get some answers out of the world champion. And he was, cryptic at times, but also, threw some people under the bus. But hopefully we will hear more from the world champion after the tournament. At least that's what he said. And hopefully we will get some clarity into the whole situation. But for now, he mentioned Niemann's mentor or coach, trainer, Max Dlugi, which is another insinuation, but it's kind of an open secret in a way that Max Dlugi allegedly cheated at a Title Tuesday. At least one of the Title Tuesdays he was kicked out of the tournament before the tournament finished and didn't play for a while, so that should raise at least a few eyebrows if you put two and two together. So but I mean, you can have a coach that has a dirty past. It doesn't mean that the same should apply to you. But we of course know that Hans Niemann cheated in the past, online at least. But the evidence so far is supporting that he hasn't done it recently, at least, over the board. But hopefully we will get some more news on the situation soon. But anyway, on to the game, and this was the final 8. Hans Niemann qualified, and fortunately for Magnus, he stayed out of the 8th place, because if he had finished 8th, he would have met Magnus, and I guess Magnus wouldn't have played, and Niemann would have qualified. Instead, he played against Quang Liem, and I say crossed like a buck. Okay, not entirely correct. The match did go down the wire, went the full 4 games, but in the final game, Quang Liem played fantastically and didn't give Niemann any chances. So Quang Liem qualifies. So Niemann is out of the tournament, which means that basically we're gonna have I think a few days off from the drama until Magnus hopefully speaks out after the tournament. But let's look at the game, and let's give some props to Quang Liem. Quang Liem might be one of the least talked about, overlooked, underappreciated players that play these elite tournaments. He's very good in rapid and blitz. He's a former world blitz champion, if I'm not mistaken, and he's always kind of around. This tournament we have 16 strong players, and he's in the top 8. He's always hanging around, And in this game he showed pretty good strength. He played d4 against Hans Niemann. Knight f6, knight to f3, d5, bishop f4 would have been fun. The London system. Quang Liem has done a course on Chessable on the London, but it goes for c4 here. e6, knight c3, and Niemann goes for the Taras with c5, and Quang Liem goes for e3. We have a symmetrical line here, the so-called semi-Taras here after knight c6, and the meta or the battle here is kind of revolved around the capture on the c-file. So white doesn't want to take immediately, because then the bishop can capture in one move. And white also doesn't want to move the bishop, because then black can take and the bishop has to move again. So that's why And in similar positions, white tries to find useful waiting moves, and a3 is one of those moves. Now black could play a6 himself, try to kind of play a copycat strategy, but with white having played a3, he can now, if black plays a6, we could take on c5 and play b4. And the game starts to, we start to go away from the symmetry. But that doesn't apply because Hans actually took on c4 here. D takes c4, bishop takes c4 and a6. And now Quang Liem castled and allowed black to play b5 here. Bishop retreated, bishop b7, and queen to e2. Black played queen g7, rook d1, and rook d8. I think taking with the queen on e2 lined up here against the king, I think white is too fast with a threat of simply playing the move d5 at some point. His pieces make sense. I think we're just helping white. So rook d8. Trying to keep things restrained, but this allows white to play d5. Black, however, should be fine here. He takes on d5, and this has all been played before. Bishop e7. White plays e4, and black castles. Black is still very solid. g3 by white, weakening the king side a little bit, but with no pieces around, shouldn't be too much of a problem. And white figures it's more important to be able to play bishop f4. And here, according to the computer, black should have played rook f to e8, and the computer does assess this as slightly better for black, somewhere around half a pawn. But Hans puts the knight on the rim here, knight to a5, and the computer is really disliking that move, and now white has a very, very slight edge and plays bishop to f4. The queen comes to b6, and here we have the very first new move of the game, knight to e5. Previously rook a to c1 had been played, but that seems to let black off the hook after c4, and that was played in a game between Batsiashvili and Jeffrey Xiong. Jeffrey Xiong, who has done fantastically in Title Tuesdays. I think he's won now 2 weeks in a row. Very strong performance in Title Tuesdays by Jeffrey Xiong. Title Tuesdays seem to be a battleground for various things these days. But okay, knight to e5 was played, the first new move of the game. Hansen took on d5 and played queen to b7. And this is, knight a5 was sort of the first, inaccuracy, let's say. Queen b7 also not optimal. And now after rook a to d1, black is actually in a bit of trouble because it's hard to find a move. Because now we're simply threatening rook d7. Let's say a blank move like c4. Rook d7, and you're going to lose this bishop on e7. That's a problem. Another problem is it's difficult to find a move, and a move like rook f to e8, simply saying, not simply passing. We have this wonderful move, knight takes f7. And look at this, queen h5, and if king g8, if king f8, maybe rook f5, or queen takes h7. But if king g8, we can take on d8 twice. And look at the back rank. Oops, boomski, checkmate. So not so easy for black to move here, and Hans ended up taking on d5, but that gives white a very strong pass pawn on d file, which is supported by a lot of white pieces. So we have the rook back here, the pass pawn ready to be pushed, the bishop and the knight around, and for some reason, the pawn turned green finally. So bishop f6, d6 were coming anyway. But b4 actually was probably the best move here according to the computer. And the idea is simply to undermine the pawn on c5, because after d6, why won't you let me? Yeah, thank you. d6. Black had maybe played knight b3 here, which Hans didn't. He played knight c6. But if knight b3, maybe the knight can come to life on d4, and black is still fighting. As played in the game after knight c6, it just looks like, I don't want to say a forced loss, but it simply looks horrible. d7, and black is just in a world of hurt. He played queen e6, which looks ugly, but it's actually the best move. If you play a black move, let's make luft like h6. Look at this. We'll play rook d6. Queen has to leave the diagonal, but we take on f6 and play queen e8. And there are simply too many threats. This bishop takes h6. This bishop d6. And the queen has a hard time protecting everything. If we try like cover bishop d6, I'm gonna take this and queen. GG. So queen e6 was played, but the problem with that is bishop d6 is an easy move to find, followed by bishop takes c5. And now we're up a pawn. The bishop can't capture on b2 because it has to keep an eye on the promotion. King tries to enter, but now b4, consolidating. And bishop d8. If we try something like e5, trying to get the king to e6, trying to win the pawn, the problem is we're going to lose stuff. We're going to take on a6, and then b6 will fall. Check, king f7, rook b6, two connected passed pawns, GG. So it's basically game over at this point, and Niemann is falling out of the tournament here. Bishop c7, bishop d6. We trade, and black's main issue here after e4, king f1, king d8. The main issue is that if you try to win the pawn, let's say we play rook d8, you simply enter a lost king and pawn ante. King e3, I win the pawn, I have 3 against 2. I create a passed pawn, I win the game. So, I mean, Hans can't really do anything. He tried to block with the king and activate the rook. But look at the beautiful technique here, king e3, rook a2, rook d3. The rook protects the pawn on a3. It protects d7, and soon it will protect the pawn on f3. Rook a1, h4, Czechoslovakia, king f4, rook e2, f3. Now the rook protects everything, and we just activate the king or use the king set pawns. If they're attacked, we can put them like this, and everything is defended. King is coming in, and Hans finally resigned as well. The king is simply going to mop up here. And Quang Liem wins. So he qualifies, and well, he has a tough matchup against Ergaisi. Magnus also qualified, won against Aronian. He will face Vincent Keimer in the semi-final. So as we're drawing closer to the finish of this tournament. So yep, interesting stuff. Quang Liem with a good game, and the Hans Niemann story is ending, at least in this tournament, and I guess we'll find out in a few days what's in store for the future. But until then, we'll just have to wait, and I'll hopefully see you soon. Thanks for watching. Bye.